to our fourth D'Amore-McKim School of Business COVID-19 Resilience Talk, Leadership in Challenging Times. I'm Debbie Magnesi. I'm the Assistant Dean of Development at the D'Amore-McKim School of Business, and I'm so pleased to be here to kick off this afternoon's talk. First, a little bit about this event and the Resilient Talk series. In an effort to bring our community together during these uncertain times, we're hosting virtual events with faculty, friends, thought leaders, and others around specific COVID-19 crisis-related topics. We hope to bring value to you by providing access, a forum to share ideas with others, and experiences to continue your lifelong learning. These sessions are not simply prepackaged offerings, but a platform for unscripted conversations by the D'Amore-McKim community for the Northeastern community. We are so pleased today to have Coach Jim Madigan and Tim Connelly with us to talk about their experiences and lessons in leadership. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. We are going to take the liberty of turning everyone's microphones off, and we ask that you all turn off your videos, which will enable us to have a nice clean recording of this talk so that it can be shared with others. I encourage you to click the button in the top right hand of your Zoom screen for speaker view. Then you can see very clearly the person who's speaking as opposed to a bunch of little black boxes with people's names on them. And we strongly encourage you as the talk goes on for you to ask any questions you have for Jim or Tim or both of them into the chat, and we will be sure to keep an eye on those and ask them your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Coach Madigan to kick us off.
Debbie, thank you very much for having me and Tim and being able to chat and speak with our DMSB alums and friends of the college. And I'd like to introduce Tim Connelly, who's been a good friend for many years and whose family is a big part of Northeastern University. Tim is currently a limited partner and formerly a general partner at Brown Brothers Harriman, BBH. Tim enjoyed a 30-year career at BBH, held many different roles during that tenure that spanned basically every aspect of the investment finance industry. Following retirement from active participation at BBH, he was tasked by Governor Baker to run the Mass Technology Collaborative, which promotes and supports the innovation technology ecosystems here in the Commonwealth and Massachusetts. Tim is currently pursuing many of his passions in the philanthropic world. Most of that is through board work focused around the educational, charitable, and special needs areas in space. Tim's an undergrad from Williams College, where he was a three-sport athlete there. I'll touch upon that in a second. Received his MBA from the D'Amore-McKim School of Business, as well as a CFA. He's at Williams, three-sport athlete, where he played hockey, baseball are the two notable sports for me, and continued to play hockey in Europe after he graduated, and is a part owner of a few professional sport franchises. Tim's father, Tinker Connelly, is probably one of the top 5 athletes in the history of Northeastern University. So while we think of Reggie Lewis and Danny Roth and some of those, Tim's father is a graduate of 53, is in that space and three-sport athlete. I'm sure that's where Tim gets it from. And within the Connelly family, there are 4 DMS degrees. Tim, his brother Matt, who I saw on this chat, who's a good friend of mine and also spoken many times in the college, in the D'Amore-McKim School of Business in our logistics area, and then his son Joe and Tim's nephew Joe. So pleased that Tim is going to be with us and speaking later on today.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. And it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Jim Madigan. 39 years ago, or actually in 1981, Jimmy came from Toronto to Huntington Avenue, and he's been with Northeastern essentially ever since. As someone who grew up in the Northeastern family, I never thought I would be able to talk about Jim's accolades as I can. He's a 2-time Beanpot champion as a player. He's a member of an ECAC championship team and one team that went to the Frozen Four. As a coach, He was a two-time Hockey East champion and a three-peat, and we're still going. We're looking for four, right, Jimmy, of Beanpot championships here in the last 3 years. He also had the opportunity to develop young men, scholar athletes, and he did so with such aplomb that Adam Gaudette is the first Hobie Baker Award winner at Northeastern. That's akin in the coaching profession to someone coaching a Heisman Trophy winner. Jimmy has kept it in the family. He's a quintessential Northeastern grad. He had the good sense to marry Kimberly, a 1983 grad out of Northeastern. And his daughters, Kelly and Kate, also graduated from the D'Amore-McKim School of Business, and keeping athletics in the family. One's currently at Reebok and the other working for the New Jersey Devils. So with that, we'll turn it over to Jimmy and talk a bit about leadership during a crisis.
Thanks, Tim. I'm used to addressing 18 to 23-year-olds, and sometimes the language gets a little colorful. So I'm hoping Debbie's got a quick trigger finger there and gives me the 3-second delay so it doesn't get all those colorful words don't get shared with our audience. The theme is of resiliency and leadership in challenging times. And I thought I'd just give you a glimpse into our program and how me as a coaching staff and our coaching staff have dealt over the last 2 months with that adversity that we've all been faced with. And, I think it's important I set the stage back to Thursday, March 12th, and our hockey team is scheduled to leave to go to UMass Amherst to play in the first round of the playoffs. We're defending champs. Everyone's excited about heading out there. Our players reported to the locker room for earlier that afternoon, and everyone knew it was a fluid situation with a lot of the league championships and conference plays being canceled. By the time I got in the locker room, I knew that all eyes were on me, and I'd addressed our group over the last 9 years in many times, in many situations, over academics, over dealing with adversity, seizing addresses that have circled around tough losses in certain games, losing NCAA tournament games, losing Beanpot championship games, sensitive conversations in those locker rooms while I've addressed the players, but nothing prepared me for what was going to take place. And I could see as I was in that room, the facial expressions of our players. They knew what I was going to say. And when I had to tell them the season was canceled, you can understand their disappointment that I saw on their face right away. And so I was direct in telling them, and with empathy in my heart, I felt sorry for each and every one in the room, because of the coaching staff, we know the commitment our student athletes make during the course of the season. And it's just not the season, it's a 12-month process, including summers, and there's a lot of sacrifices that are made. So when I told them the immediate drop in the heads was visible, and this is a group of players, and particularly led by our senior class, that had experienced a lot of wins: 3 Beanpot championships, 2 NCAA appearances, Hockey East championship, a Bell Pot championships, 86 career wins, and this was a decorated class. And this is a group that had faced adversity before. They faced it each and every day in practice and games. And there are many varieties of adversity, but our players and team have successfully faced it head on in every situation, and they've overcome it. They've had the mental toughness, and they'd shown and demonstrated to be a resilient group. How else would you think a group can come back in the Beanpot Championship, having given up the tying goal at 1.5 seconds left in the game to that school over in Commonwealth Avenue, and come back to win in double overtime? That's a pretty resilient group, and a group that knows how to overcome adversity, and that's what our group did. But to be able to overcome that adversity, you have to have great leadership, and you have to have great culture. And for me, that's where I want to focus in on now. For me, I don't wake up in the morning and profess I'm going to be a great leader today. For me, strong leadership only emerges once you have a great culture in your team or within your organization. Culture is the first and foremost ingredient for team organization success. Culture beats strategy. It beats X's and O's every single day of the week. Culture is built on trust. It's built on accountability, caring, respect, communication, setting expectations, being a good teammate, being a good coworker. Culture, once it's established, allows you to lead. Our players trust us because we've built an environment where we place the student athletes first and we invest in them. We put them in situations where they can succeed academically, athletically, socially. And when we face challenging times like we're in right now, that's when leadership is most needed. I often tell our captains who are leaders in that locker room, it's easy to lead when you're in first place, you're up 5-0 in a game. It's a little more difficult to lead when you're behind or you're in the standings, you're behind in a game. And that's when we need leadership most to rise up and meet the challenge. It's during these difficult challenging times when we as coaches need to lead with confidence and conviction. As a coaching staff, we're always preaching to our players, your problems can't be greater than your purpose. So yes, we're facing challenging health issue right now, but we need to focus on what we can control. And that is obviously following the advice of our healthcare officials and professionals and staying focused on what we need to do to prepare for the upcoming season. That's our purpose. We can't worry about the inconveniences that are in front of us. Life is full of inconveniences that we can't control, but we can control our mindset. We can control our daily approach. So what have we done? The last 2 months, we as a coaching staff have over-communicated to our players. In the first month, we experienced and enjoyed virtual events as a team, our team banquet, announcement of our captains, our graduation celebration. In fact, I went to 2 of our Massachusetts players' homes and hoisted and toasted them with a beer on graduation day. Matt Philippe and Ryan Shea, 2 captains on our team who didn't obviously get to experience, enjoy the traditional senior experience this year. We got, as we transitioned from the end of our season to the beginning of a new season after graduation, we then started planning with our new incoming freshmen, along with our returning players, in a new set of activities and initiatives that we called the Player Development Series, where we can bring the players together with the new incoming players and talk about team culture, team identity, introduce systems, bring in guest speakers from the NHL, John Stevens Sr., whose 2 boys played at Northeastern, John Madden Sr., whose son, John Ty Madden, left our program this year after 2 years to sign an NHL contract. NHL players like Matt Benning, who has been played 4 years in the National Hockey League, is finishing off his DMSB degree right now, as he just chipped away at it over the last 4 years. Zach Aston Reese, those are the speakers that are going to be joining us, talking about their experiences. So you can notice when I've talked about team culture, identity, our systems, our guest speakers, identity and culture come before systems and strategy. It's a series where we're interacting with our players. Players are interacting with each other, and it's a model we bring people together. We're over-communicating. We're giving them opportunities to remain together and focus on what we can control. Again, we're not worried about the problems. We're just focusing on what we can do to make ourselves better. These daily meetings bring us together, allow us to focus on ourselves and realize our problems aren't as great as our own purpose. Within Northeastern Hockey, we realize we're just a microcosm of what is actually occurring at the university level. Our president, our senior leadership team have over-communicated to the university community since March 12th, since we've all been working from home virtually and since our student left to go back to their home, with updates each and every day, each and every week on where we are as a community. I'm sure some of you have seen President Yoon over the last couple of days. He made an appearance on CNN. He's been on most of the ABC, NBC, CBS affiliate local stations, speaking about opening up our campus in the fall. If you listen to him carefully, his opening statement is always about the health, welfare, and safety of our students, of our faculty, and of our staff. And certainly he is planning, along with this senior leadership team, to opening up in the fall, but it's not going to come at the sacrifice of our Northeastern community. And when he says those things, he believes it. He's someone that aligns his words with his actions. He's a caring person. He truly cares about everyone at Northeastern University. During this time, I've received 2 calls from the president, asking me how our staff is, asking me how I'm doing, how my family's doing, how our players are doing, how my current colleagues, coaches are doing. He's someone that truly, as I said, care about the university. He didn't wake up on March 12th and yell out to the university community, I'm going to lead today. No, he has led since August 15, 2006. The president is not allowing our problems to be greater than our focus. His words, his actions are always in alignment. Because he has created a culture at Northeastern over the last 4 years, a culture based on trust, on caring, on communication, respect, setting expectations. And believe me, he sets high expectations for our university community. Achieving those goals, this has allowed him to lead in good times and now in more challenging times. And yes, you can say I drank the Kool-Aid 39 years ago when I first stepped foot on campus and moved into Whitehall. But I don't say it with blind faith. I say it with conviction based on facts. Based on how our university's been positioned over the last 14 years under President Ayoun's leadership. His leadership is needed now more than ever. Just like our coaching staff leadership is needed with our own current crop of student athletes more than ever. There are some hard decisions that are going to have to be made, but we have confidence. The players have confidence in us, and we as a university community have confidence in the president's decisions because he's able to see the big picture, and through his critical thinking will deliver on making those right decisions. We at Northeastern, in the D'Amore-McKim School of Business, Athletics, in every corner of the university institution will emerge greater because of our president and our senior leadership's leadership. And just as our players trust us as coaches, we, the university community, trust our president because of his leadership. We have a sign in our locker room that says it's a privilege to be part of Northeastern hockey program. To be honest with you, it's a privilege to be part of Northeastern University now more than ever under this leadership. And as we continue to move forward, there's going to be challenging times that are going to face us each and every day, but because of that leadership, we will remain Northeastern strong. Tim?
Thank you, Jimmy. That was excellent. So my view on leadership and leadership in a crisis, I think there's a constancy in business and in life, and that is certainty of crisis. Crises come in all shapes and sizes. There are economic crises like the crash in '87, the financial turmoil in '08, '09. There are wars and conflicts, conventional terrorism, 9/11, the Middle East. There are political conflicts. There are health scares and pandemics than one we're experiencing now. There are industrial crises. Think about how bookstores, retailers, or supermarkets feel about Amazon, what it's done to their value proposition, what it's done to their business. They are operating and need to operate with leadership in time of crisis. There are false starts. Sometimes crises appear to be bigger than they are. I think of Y2K. I think of Brexit. I would make that argument now. Sometimes crises are self-inflicted. You can ask the folks at Boeing or Equifax, and that's just to name a few. In short, if you run a global business, you inevitably are dealing with a crisis in one part of the world or another. As such, leadership needs to be resilient, the topic of today's conversation. So let's take a look at what resilient leadership means. Resilience is defined as the ability to recover and spring back. As such, this definition of resiliency necessitates that strong leadership already exists. It stands to reason that effective leadership is a prerequisite to resilient leadership. Thus, effective leadership qualities and behaviors need to be practiced, developed, and nurtured before a crisis. I think Jimmy offered some examples of his program, and President Ayoun and I would agree. The corollary to that is also true. Poor leaders and managers are always always exposed during a crisis. Resilient leaders have the ability to absorb what's going on, the disruptive forces at hand, and bounce back and excel. Moreover, being a good leader helps create culture, and it is culture that is relied upon during times of adversity. So what are the qualities present in effective leaders that need to be on display during good times? Again, prerequisite to managing the crisis. There are many. I think I would highlight 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The most important thing I can think of with regard to effective leadership is passion. Great leaders have passion. It's controlled, however, controlled passion, not unbridled passion. One wants to be highly passionate and care about the entity they work for and the people they are leading. It's not heroic, and passion does not mean running around with one's head cut off. I like to think of it as the 3 Ps: passion, with purpose, and a plan. Strong leaders also in good times need to develop a deep and skillful bench. They exhibit a certain approach to hiring and promotions that is confident and thinks of the organization first. My mentor always told me to seek and hire people that are smarter than you, more talented than you, or have a skill that you do not possess. That was great advice. You want to avoid hiring docile types or yes men and women. And I think if all of you are on the call, you see that in the business. You can see people who kind of promote people who are not challenging them. And I would argue that that's a little giveaway with regard to leadership or lack of leadership when times get tough. I would also say to those in the call that early in your career, try when you enter a firm, sometimes when I was very fortunate to work at Brown Brothers when I graduated, I wanted the most important decision, like working at Northeastern or going to school at Northeastern, what's your platform? Are you with a good institution? But then once you're there, really try to find out those good leaders, those good departments, the departments with the most talent. And don't take the view that it's going to be harder to advance because there's a great team in front of you that you're joining. That is an incredible learning opportunity, and that will pay dividends for you in the future. As a leader, in order to develop talent in a bench, I always value diversity of opinion in my direct reports. And one must also delegate properly. I think all of us have seen managers that are not leaders that over-delegate. And sometimes I would say, we're not quite sure what they're doing from 9 to 5. But delegating properly is important. It's very important when you're leading not to run every meeting. It's not to absorb all the oxygen in the room. It's to give people a chance to take the lead and set in the agenda and really leading that business group, even if you are present. And I would also tell you that being visual with that endorsement is highly important. So other people will take those cues when you delegate to someone and let them represent you in a business activity. Great leaders also have their takeout in hand. Thus, a strong team of associates is a group of resilient leaders that one can lean on during a time of crisis. So that's 2, passion, controlled passion, and a deep and talented bench in the development thereof. Also, leaders are reliable. You can count on them, and they're winners. And finally, Jimmy had used the word from time to time. It happens all the time with any leader in a career. You must display empathy. You must be aware of it. You must be concerned about the people who work for you and those around you. So let's turn our attention to traits and strategies now to employ that make managers effective leaders and managers during a crisis. Those who can bounce back and thus are resilient. I would argue that one of the first skills and talents one needs in leadership during a time of crisis is to be external. Fight the natural human emotion or need in time of crisis to hunker down, to look inward. Be out in front. Leaders do this. Jimmy had a perfect example of President Ayoun being out in front of his constituency, not just his students, not just his faculty, but on CNN, etc. And this leads to another one: engage all your constituencies. To be sure, your staff, their emotional, and at times like now, their physical well-being needs to be taken care of. Yet oftentimes it's more important to properly engage customers, community, and counterparties. Look at the situation you are in, how you respond to it through their eyes. 3, communicate early and often. Be transparent and clear. And in this age, always remember and assume that what you do will potentially end up on the web somewhere. I used to say it on the front page of the Globe, but that now is evidently irrelevant. Okay, number 4, prioritize. Work what's really important on. Work on what's really important. Most leaders or managers, I find, fall short here, as during a time of crisis, they're unable to ascertain the 2 to 3 most important and impactful things to work on. Usually in a crisis, there's a myriad of things going on. You need, as a manager, to identify the 2 most impactful, important, or 2 or 3, and work and focus your entire effort on that, or the majority of it. And what does it take to understand what those 2 and 3 are? I'm not sure. I think in some respects that's the it factor, or talent, or whatever, or experience. Break up your overall objective and strategy into pieces in order to realize early wins, and celebrate those wins on the way to your ultimate prize. In thinking about a sports analogy with Jimmy, I might hear it from a hockey coach or a football coach: 1 quarter at a time, 1 period at a time. We're going to win the next 30 minutes. Things like that. Be cool, calm, and collected in the face of adversity. Others will sense your anxiety if you're not. And that is like a cancer in managing a group during a time of adversity. The more stressful it gets in some level, the calmer you should become. And accept trade-offs, the reality of trade-offs, and explain the need for speed. Being slow and plodding during a crisis is a recipe for disaster. Waiting for the perfect or best plan or solution to evolve or manifest itself is never going to be a good strategy. I would much rather take a good plan or course of action and execute the hell out of it. That's going to give you terrific outcomes, in my judgment. A plan that is a B plan, well executed, oftentimes results in A outcomes. An A plan, poorly executed, often results in D outcomes. As such, my 8th and final point, during a crisis, imperfection is okay. Now, a couple takeaways before we move to Q&A, and looking forward to that part of the discussion. We've maintained, both Jimmy and I think, that resilient leadership during a crisis is highly dependent on what's being done when times are good. Be ready for it by developing a good, or by promoting or acquiring great talent. I would also suggest that you need to re-engineer or disrupt your own business when times are good. When we were having a good run of it, about the 3rd year, I would get antsy and try to see something that fundamentally reorganized our business and take a different approach in how we looked at things. It's a little counterintuitive, because why break something that's working well? But I think at the end of the day, the corollary of that is always true. No one ever wants to be caught in a situation where they have to do something because they're forced to during time of duress. You want to be in control. That said, as Winston Churchill used to say, never waste a crisis. And I think of 360 Huntington Avenue to get this point across. In 2008 and 2009, barely 2 years into his role, Joseph Aoun didn't look inward or hunker down, as many did in the academic space during that financial meltdown. No, what did he do? He invested in his business. He invested in Northeastern. He hired many talented faculty when others weren't, or worse. He dramatically increased his cost, yet fundamentally invested in his business when the competition was retrenching. That took guts. Why was he able to do this? I think it was because he was prepared, both strategically and financially. During those first 2 years prior to that crisis, he re-engineered his business, disrupted it in order to get it to where he wanted to be, built the foundation in order to handle a crisis, and knew how to take advantage of it when it appeared. He passionately knew where the institution wanted to go. Remember that word, passion. He had a plan. He had a great product to sell to potential faculty hires. He didn't get absorbed with internal feelings. I am sure that a lot of people on Northeastern's reservation at that time thought, what is the president doing by hiring more staff, by increasing our costs? I am sure some people in the faculty thought, I don't want to see someone come in above me. I thought I was going to have that next associate dean role. But you know what? Joseph kept the institution first. He prioritized, he bounced back, he turned the negative into a positive, and was a good communicator and transparent about his purpose. He and this institution exhibited resilient leadership. Thank you.
Nicely done, Tim.
Thanks, Ernie. Do we go to,
so I'll hop in here now. We have a few good questions already in the chat, both by Matthew Connelly. So I'm guessing there's a relation there.
there is a relationship there. Well done, Matthew.
So the first one is for Coach Madigan. He is wondering how you have learned to become so effective in connecting with and communicating with a young and diverse group of men.
Thanks for that question, Deb and Matt. And before I answer that, Matt and Tim, I've noticed on the chat that your brother-in-law, who will remain nameless, is on there. I didn't know we invited BC folks in on this chat, but if you guys are okay with it, I'm okay with him remaining on the chat.
Right.
And I know him, so I'm joking, obviously. You know, to your point there, question there, Matt, in terms of being connected to our student athletes, you know, it's so important that as a coaching staff that we connect with our student athletes each and every day. And you know, our student athletes are going through some challenging times, just not now, but think about when they enter a university, they're 18, 19 years of age, and they're transitioning academically, athletically, socially into a whole new world. And, you know, they're away from home, some for the first time, and they look to their coaches as their mentors, and people who can help them with that transition. And we take that upon ourselves very seriously in making sure we can assist those young men and our student athletes through that transition. So for us, it's getting to know the players on a personal basis. You know, we talk to them more than just about hockey, you know, more than just about academics. We know what's going on in their lives, whether it be their family life, whether it be siblings, whatever is going on in their lives. It's important for us that we know that so that we can connect with them, you know, on different levels other than in hockey and in school. And certainly academics and athletics are going to drive their passion at Northeastern. But if we have a better understanding of them as people, then we can connect with them a lot better, and then we can help them meet their goals and their aspirations while they're at Northeastern over a 4-year period. You know, players turn over at Northeastern every 4 years. You know, it's a cycle different than many organizations, and Tim and I were talking about it, different than professional sports organizations. So it's a short period of time while they're here, and we want to make sure during that period of time that we can, as I said, help them meet their aspirations and their goals so that they can be successful, and they look at their 4-year career at Northeastern as one of excitement, enjoyment, and being able to then to take the skill set, most importantly, the skill set they learned, and now apply it into the professional workforce.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you so much, Jim. Tim, I'm going to ask you Matt's other question. He's wondering what your greatest challenge was during your time executing at BBH Global Practice.
Well, Thanks, Matt. I was looking forward to a softball question, so we'll maybe let me think about what that answer would be. There's a lot of crises, as mentioned, and so I tried to think of a couple themes of leadership managing during a crisis, and I might offer the theme of having a local crisis when your business is global. And that was the marathon bombing that occurred here in Boston. We're a global business. London, while maybe reading the headlines and sympathetic to what were going on, business as usual, same in Asia, same in different parts of the United States. Yet in Boston, there was a lockdown, not dissimilar to what we're seeing now. And how do you deal with that when, at some level, if you had a local business, it's tough and it's important, but if you have a geographic lockdown and your business is local, then everyone's shut down and you kind of open the doors when you're able. If you're part of a supply chain that is reliant on delivering goods and services to others in other parts of the world and you're on lockdown, how do you handle it? So one of the things you do, you have to be prepared, just like you need a good team. You have to be able to have disaster recovery programs in place, and you keep your fingers crossed and hope they work. That also requires testing, and so we would invariably test early and often when times were good. That's part of that disrupting or preparing when times are good for a time of crisis. And they came through. So you immediately work from home. And you immediately communicate with your constituency. So while talking to staff, I had a team to do that to a degree that I was satisfied with. It's not that I didn't do it, but that allowed me the ability to talk to counterparties, talk to clients, and to assure them that, and talk to our other offices, frankly, and to assure them that they could rely on us to get the job done. And indeed we did.
Great, thank you so much. This is a question to both of you from Mary Kane. Tim and Jim, thank you both for your words and examples. I'm sure you each have times when personally the situation is challenging. What do you do to keep yourself motivated and positive?
Tim, go ahead. I'll let you go first.
Debbie, can you just repeat the question again a little bit for me?
Absolutely. Mary said that she's sure that you both have times personally when the situation is challenging, and what do you do to keep yourself motivated and positive?
So I'll interpret the question this way, maybe let Jimmy tackle it more traditional sense. I think people are challenged both in the workplace and also outside the workplace. Some of the most important challenges I think occur outside the workplace rather than in, and there's a certain type of determination, pride, or skill to not bring those troubles into the workplace. I think good leaders, managers, good employees are able to do that, and it's hard sometimes. So I would say that, everyone working at trying to keep the personal issues that everyone has with children and the like, in that personal sphere. And when you kind of walk in the door at business, you kind of compartmentalize and you bring that and deal with it. Allows you to deal with those issues on the merits of those issues themselves, that you're not dragging in what I would call baggage from other areas. And that's hard to do. It's not easy, but certainly having an awareness of not letting things slip into one arena from the other, I think is good practice.
Well said, Tim. And for me, first and foremost, I'm fortunate that my personal life, my home life is a strong one. So for a lot of folks, they're dealing with when they have personal issue that could be from home, it could be from a relative that might be sick. It could come from a variety of different issues, as Tim said, that will allow it to carry over into your professional life. And I've been one that's always been able to compartmentalize very, very easily, and have been able to, keep focused on, again, the comment I meant earlier about your problems aren't as big as your purpose, being able to live that type of motto and compartmentalize and stay focused on what was at hand. And it's probably the discipline I learned as an athlete, growing up over the period of time. And for me, I've been fortunate to be coming to, I call it the Center of Excellence on Huntington Avenue for 39 years. There's not many bad days that I've had at Northeastern. Certainly there's days you get frustrated a little bit here and there, but I get energized coming to campus every day. It's because we're around 18 to 23-year-olds each and every day who are, it's a vibrant community. It's an enthusiastic community. So you have to reach to that level. I've been fortunate at Northeastern to also be involved in external roles in development, both in athletics development and the business school, DMSB development, and obviously as a hockey coach here at Northeastern, where I've got a platform, particularly in the last 9 years, of reaching out to our external constituencies. And for me, it's important that I'm always, I don't want to say on, but that the message I'm delivering is one that aligns with our university, aligns with our student athletes, and allows me to be optimistic, which I am in nature. So I try to keep the personal, situation separate, but I'm fortunate that I've got a loving family, loving wife and daughters, and allow me to stay focused on the things that I need to do hockey-wise at the university.
I might punch in here a little bit because I know Jimmy knows my family, but my wife's on the thing too. And when I'm talking about personal side here, I'm not necessarily talking about myself, even though every family has its challenge. What I am talking about is my experience in managing people, that over the years, there are many folks that have come in that are dealing with difficult things in their life. And so part of that if you remember, that we talked about empathy and we talked about being prepared. I think organizationally, one of the things you can do to be prepared for crises is to make sure you have, in a business sense, a great employee assistance program in place that your staff can rely on. And I think that is the nature of why one of the 4 things of great leadership we talk about is the term, both Jimmy and I use it, empathy, being able to understand the shoes that someone else is walking in and try to accommodate that without compromising the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish from a business point of view.
And let me just add on to Tim's comment there, because that triggered something for me. Sorry, is that on the personal side, when you're dealing with, employees on the personal side, is being a real good listener. So empathy is important, but being a real good listener is really important, and showing people the care and the respect you have for them, and then trying to help them through those situations, difficult situations, if they're encountering them. Debbie, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thank you both so much.
All right, I have a great question for Tim. What are some good ways to step up as a leader during a crisis when you're not in a formal leadership position, especially for younger employees?
All right. That's a great question. I think I tell every young employee that came through Brown Brothers that, doing your job and doing it well will keep you employed. You always have to reach beyond your job, reach beyond your job definition at times in order to be noticed and or advance. And those opportunities become more prevalent during a crisis, are more apparent during a crisis. There are more opportunities to do things. So look beyond your desk, reach out and try to help a colleague with something they're struggling with during a time of crisis. That will create capital for you with them and also with their manager. That's one way to do it. The other way is a recent example that I had, that my son reminded me of this morning, which is my work with the United Way. The United Way is something I'm passionate about. It's the world's largest charity, the nation's largest charity in the aggregate, but it operates like a bunch of small and micro businesses, each with a local community entity. There's over 1,000, over 1,200 actually United Ways in the nation. And during a time of crisis, like now, when you look into the future next year, and the United Ways model is challenged. It's a workplace model. Maybe not many people are going to be in the workplace. People are putting money, and the United Way is doing a great job with regard to COVID-19 type of activities and support of agencies. But the problems that existed prior to COVID-19 are still there. So what do you do? And so as a volunteer without any organizational authority, I raised my hand to offer to an idea that we could combine our back offices of the various United Ways and create a shared service platform to lower cost, maybe improve service as well, but also to be able to direct more dollars to people in need. That wasn't my job description. I was a volunteer, and to that end, IBM Worldwide bought into the idea. They've hired IBM Consulting, which I'm working with to try to develop a plan as we speak to do something that we probably should have done anyway, but taking advantage of this crisis in order to do something different and important. So I think at the end of the day, it's raising your hand and offering to help, whether it's within a corporate setting and someone, early on in your career, or whether it's in a volunteer setting, like the example I just gave you.
That was great, thank you. Let's see, this says, failure, though a good teacher, can at times be devastating. How do you handle failure and make sure it does not overwhelm you? And this goes to both of you.
Jimmy, you want to start with that? Or?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'll let Jimmy do this. Well, I think we're both lucky to have grown up in an athletic household and to grow up as athletes, because there's no better background and experience to deal with failure than athletics. I'm reminded in baseball, if you're a 300 hitter, which is a terrific achievement, you fail 7 times out of 10. If you're a portfolio manager, and like I was for a number of years, you're never going to pick only winners, ever. So you have to be able to deal with that failure, and that gets back to the resiliency question as well. The point is, I think what managers like not to see is that people fail too often, or people fail doing the same thing over and over again. If you fail, it's okay. If you learn from that, and the assumption there is you probably don't fail similarly. And for those, so provided that failure is in that construct, I think most good managers and good leaders like to see a little failure from time to time and see how their lieutenants respond to it. And it's how they respond to it that really is the differentiator.
And I'm going to answer it along the same lines as Tim. And, he used the analogy of baseball, which is his and his dad's approach. So that's not a surprise. And, if I look at it in our world in hockey, a real good goal scorer might have a shooting percentage of 12, 13% of the amount of shots he takes versus how many goals he scores during the course of the year. It's a low percentage. Michael Jordan's talked about how many, last minute shots he's taken that he's won games, but he'll also say he took probably 3-4 times as many that didn't go in, but that didn't stop him from taking the next one. So he had confidence in his ability. So failure's part of any position you're going to have, and it's how you react to that failure that's what Tim was getting to. That's the differentiator. That's a defining moment for me. So if you fail, can you learn from your mistakes? Can you learn what you didn't do right, apply it moving forward to successfully completing the situation, the job, or whatever was at hand? It's being able to pick your bootstraps up when things aren't going well, working through a tough situation, coming out on the other end successful, knowing that you worked hard at it, knowing that you had to overcome some obstacles, some adversity you had to face along the way, and because of that, you're better for it. We love it. I tell a story about Dylan Secure, who ended up being an All-American. His freshman year, he was a healthy scratch 7 or 8 times in that season, and he was ready to leave because he wasn't used to failing. He was used to playing every single game back in junior. And we told him, stick with the process, stick with it. You're working, you're getting there, you're making some strides. You're going to get there, but just have some patience and stick to the process. And he did, and he was rewarded because of it.
Thank you both. And this will probably be our last question. We only have 7 minutes left of our time. This is from Emery Trahan. He says, I can identify with your thoughts on focusing on what you can control and looking forward. This is particularly important in a crisis. Can you share any advice or anecdotes on how you have helped your teams to focus on this during times of crisis?
Tim, I'll let you go. I know Emery. I can speak to Emery anytime. He wants to hear from you more than me.
Debbie, truth be told here, I hit the chat button and lost the first part of the question. So Jimmy can either start the answer or you can repeat yourself.
Debbie, get us going again, please.
You got it. So Emery basically says that he understands that focusing on what you can control is vital during times of crisis. What he's asking is, do you have any advice on how you can help your teams focus in times of crisis? So not just yourself staying focused, but how can you motivate and help your teams focus in times like this?
Right. So I often think in where people get discouraged is when the job ahead of them seems too large. And this can be in a time of crisis where a lot is going on multiple dynamics and levels sometimes, but it also can be part of a big project. I remember at Brown Brothers one time, we had an enormous corporate action system makeover that we were doing, and it was a big job, and it was a multi-million-dollar exercise, and we were stuck in quicksand. It just was not, we weren't getting there. Every time you made an something, you did something well, it just seemed like the goal was so far away, and the target was shifting because of market dynamics that we were not getting anywhere very fast. The classic 2 step forward, 1 step back. So we broke it up into pieces. And by breaking it up into pieces, we could do something that I talked about before, which is, it lends itself to focus, is that capturing early wins. People focus when they believe a job is attainable. They focus when they believe that they can win and it can be celebrated, and they can be recognized. And so I think the best thing to do with that is to break things down into bite-sized pieces and work either concurrently or sequentially on those things in order to get to meet the final objective.
And Emery's an athletic guy and is from Buffalo originally, Tim, just so you know, and a real hockey guy. I think he's a season ticket of the Bruins, and he's our associate dean of faculty and does a wonderful job in the DMSB. Right. Emery, for me, when we're going through some adverse times with our program, I can instill some artificial confidence in the group, which our freshmen will bite on. Maybe our sophomores or juniors and seniors can see through it because they've heard it over 2 or 3 years, so they understand where I'm going. But it's similar to what Tim had just talked about. I just wrote down some notes. It's focusing on the little things, taking care of the little things first. It's focusing on the process. So our goals obviously are to win a Beanpot, win a Hockey East championship, win a national championship. But when we get to day one of the season, we take the goals and we push those aside, and we just focus in on what we can do on that Monday, first day of practice. And our focus is, let's just get better on Monday. Let's have a good day here today, practice guys. Let's focus in on Monday. And then when we get to Tuesday, let's focus in on Tuesday. Let's get better today. The best thing I enjoy saying at the end of a practice is, hey guys, we got better today. So we focus in on the small things. We enjoy the little successes along the way. And then that builds momentum from day to day, from practice to practice, game to game, that allows you by staying with the process allows you to enjoy that success towards the, when you get to those, to the bigger games, the bigger events that come later in the season. So for me, it's just breaking it down and just focusing on the little things at first.
Thanks very much, both of you.
Thanks, Emery.
And with that, we are at time. So I think I speak for everyone on the call when I express our thanks to both of you for taking the time to share your knowledge and experiences with us. I think I probably speak for many of us as well when I say we needed it today. For some reason, today has been a tougher Friday than past ones. Not sure why, but your thoughts and your insights were fabulous. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all who participated. If we didn't get to your question, we'll try and follow up separately. We'll send around a recording of the talk. And keep your eyes open for our future speaker series events that are coming up. Thank you again, Tim and Jim, and everyone have a great afternoon and a lovely weekend.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Deb.
Thank you.